our first guest, presidential candidate Gary Johnson, Governor Gary Johnson, or former governor, I should say. That's going to be exciting. He is actually a proponent of ours and an adversary of the drug war, if you will. I think as most of Americans nowadays, he's in a position of authority, and he has the ability to sway opinions. Hopefully we can work with him and get him or the likes of him, his views into office. Hey Gary, you're here with Stickman and Lara and Warren Edson on iCannabis Radio. How are you tonight?
I'm great. Thank you all for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you. I believe you're familiar with our station. We run your spot here once in a while.
Well, and I got to be on with you guys before.
You have. I admire you a lot. I personally endorse you, and that's not the station. That's me, of course. But I admire your courage and your stance on a lot of things. Obviously, we have a vested interest in your stance on drug policy, cannabis in particular. But we're going to digress from that and let you introduce yourself, as I like to do with all my guests, and really start with your background. I like folks to know who we're talking to.
Well, so I have been an entrepreneur my entire life. I started a one-man handyman business in Albuquerque in 1974, and actually grew that business to employ over 1,000 people in Albuquerque. I'm also an athlete. I've been an athlete my entire life. I remain an athlete. Competitive athlete at 59 years old is a bit of an oxymoron, but I'll be competing this summer in my 9th Leadville 100-mile mountain bike race. So
nice.
I've done Ironman Hawaii 4 times. I've climbed Mount Everest. I've gotten to climb to the top of Mount Everest.
That I got to stop you there and say I'm very jealous. I've hiked the Appalachian Trail from end to end, and I live here in Colorado, so obviously Leadville and the 14ers here are things I do. Everest is a life goal for me at some point in my life. I think I might want to give it a shot. So kudos.
Well, good. Well, good for you. And growing up in New Mexico, climbing 14ers in Colorado, climbing 14ers in Colorado in the winter was really good. Some great adventures doing that. And I've competed in many events in Colorado, and my son lives in Denver. So I am very, very. I think Colorado is the most beautiful state in the entire country, and I do live in northern New Mexico. I live just north of Taos. I live there because the skiing there is as good as anywhere on the planet, including anywhere in Colorado, and that is one of my passions. I'm the former 2-term governor of New Mexico. I had never been elected to public office prior to running for governor of New Mexico. I think I made a really positive difference as governor of New Mexico. I think that positive difference had to do with the fact that I looked at issues first and politics last. And I like to point out that in a state that's 2-to-1 Democrat, New Mexico, I got reelected as a Republican for a second term. And I really made a name for myself when it came to dollars and cents. I think I was the penny pinchiest governor of any state. I vetoed a lot of legislation while I was governor of New Mexico, which really simply was about how are we spending our tax dollars and are we spending them as wisely as we might. And I think what's significant is having vetoed as much legislation as I did in a state that is 2-to-1 Democrat, that I should have gotten reelected speaks volumes to the fact that people really do appreciate good stewardship of tax dollars. Now, I'm the Libertarian nominee for President of the United States. I'm going to be one of 3 candidates on the ballot in all 50 states. You're probably familiar with the other 2. That would be Obama and Romney. But I'm the only candidate among the three that wants to not bomb. I do not want to bomb Iran. I'm the only one out of three that wants to get out of Afghanistan tomorrow, bring the troops home tomorrow. I'm the only candidate that is really genuinely talking about marriage equality, believing that it is a constitutionally guaranteed right, similar to the civil rights in the 60s. I'm the only candidate that wants to end the drug wars. I'm the only candidate that wants to and is promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. Why is a balanced budget important? Well, if we don't do it, here's the effect that it's going to have on our lives. A Coca-Cola right now, 16-ounce Coke that costs you $1.50 or $2 is going to cost you $100 if we don't get this budget under control.
Sure.
That's going to be the ramification of continuing to borrow and spend and print money to the tune of 43 cents out of every dollar that we are spending. It's going to be runaway inflation, and it's not going to be anything that gets announced, but it's going to be the result of what it is that we're doing. And that will be some really ugly times for America. We can prevent that, but we need to do it now. We need to fix it now. And that's going to involve a mutual sacrifice on all of our parts.
Well,
so back to my being governor of New Mexico, I think most important is equality, that we all treat each other equally, that we all have an equal shot at the American dream.
Absolutely. I want to ask you to digress just for 1 second. And, I think you hit on a couple points there that could tie in together, in my opinion, and I want to get your opinion on it. Balancing the budget, our military spending, in my personal opinion, is out of control. You mentioned previously, before that you plan to pull the troops out of these wars that we're in. I guess it's a two-part question. First being, how easy do you feel that would be? My personal opinion is I feel we should spend more or concentrate our military forces more at home and not interfere as much as we do abroad. That kind of leading into the second question. Do you think in doing so, in ending these unjust wars, that will balance the budget or will be a big chunk of balancing the budget?
Well, it's about a third of the budget equation, but we need to cut. I am proposing a 43% reduction in military spending. A 43% reduction in we need to cut spending by $1.4 trillion a year. When it comes to military spending, a 43% reduction in military spending would be approximately $400 billion a year. And here's how a reduction in military spending goes down, or happens, is a reduction in nuclear warheads from 2,300 to 500. We don't need to blow up the planet 10 times. Fewer times will do. We need to reduce our military footprint on the planet. That would be the bases that we have throughout the world. That would be the military personnel that we have on the ground in Europe, in Japan, in South Korea, in Great Britain. That would be the military in uniform. It would be the civilian support staff that goes along with that. It would be extricating ourselves from all of the current military engagements that we are currently engaged in. It would be research and development, and it would be intelligence. Those are the components, the 7 components that make up military spending.
Absolutely, and I think you just basically answered, how much money that's going to save our country. Thank you for showing common sense on that issue. We could hit on every issue. I mean, equal rights is something I'd love to talk about real quick before we talk about the drug war a little bit. My other half was part of the We Are Women March here in Colorado, and there absolutely is, whether people choose to realize it or not, in legislative terms, there is a war on women in our country. We see legislation all the time trying to be pushed through to take away rights of ladies. You know, I have 2 female co-hosts and a lot of ladies, women in my life that, you know, I have to stand up for those rights. You know, what's your stance on the issues going on there?
Well, if you take abortion as clearly a woman's rights issue, I absolutely fundamentally support a woman's right to choose. To say anything otherwise, in my opinion, is just wrong. Difficult decision when it comes to abortion, absolutely unbelievably difficult decision, but a decision that only should be borne by the woman that is involved.
Absolutely.
And yes, I would agree that there is a war on women.
Thank you. There's a lot of ladies in my life that will be happy to hear you say that. So let's jump right in. It takes, as I said sort of in the intro, you know, it takes a lot of courage for any of us to stand up against the drug war, even with the polls showing, you know, that the strong majority of our population at least sees fault in our drug policy and a need for a shift. That being said, to start from the beginning again, what opened your eyes, and initially, have you always had this stance towards drug policy, or was there a specific, you know, time or event that changed this for you?
Well, growing up, I smoked marijuana. That is something that I did. And smoking marijuana, for me, was a much better alternative than drinking. I don't drink today, I don't smoke pot today, but based on my experience, marijuana is much safer than alcohol. Based on my own experience, I'm one of 100 million Americans who have smoked marijuana. I don't consider myself a criminal, and yet under the laws of this country, I have engaged in criminal activity smoking marijuana. Well, I don't think that 100 million Americans belong behind bars. And so fundamentally, I come at this from the standpoint of what we're doing isn't right. And then when I look at the issue and see that half of law enforcement, half the court, and half the prisons, all the money that we spend in all those areas are devoted to drug crime. And what are we getting for that? That we're arresting 1.8 million people a year in this country on drug-related crime, and that we have the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world, 2.3 million people. And to what end? I have come to the conclusion that 90% of the drug problem is prohibition-related, not use-related. That is not to discount the problems with use and abuse, but that should be the focus. It is never going to be legal to smoke pot, become impaired, and get behind the wheel of a car or do harm to others, similar to alcohol. But that ought to be the criteria. So I am really encouraged by the ballot initiative in Colorado to regulate marijuana like alcohol. I think Colorado has the opportunity here to be the first of 50 dominoes to fall when it comes to rational drug policy nationwide. Well, and I really believe that Colorado has this opportunity, and I'm really thinking it is going to happen in November. So part of the reason I'm on here tonight is just to applaud everyone that's listening to your station. And you mentioned it earlier, 50% of Americans right now support legalizing marijuana, if not more. What's the reason for it? It's because we're talking about it in unprecedented conversations, in unprecedented numbers.
Sure.
And the more we talk about it, the better the issue does. So thanks for an opportunity to be on here to talk about it.
Yeah, and absolutely. And just to let you know, I know you had spoken with Jason before from the station here. He probably mentioned that he was one of the authors of our hemp bill here, the phyto remediation bill. The governor actually signed that Monday night, so we're now the first state in the United States legally allowed to grow industrial hemp in any form, at least under state law. So
that's great.
Yeah, we're
terrific.
Definitely knocking down the dominoes. I know we're running a little short on time here. I guess want to point out too, what you're talking about. I've actually, you may not see us on screen here, but I'm wearing a tie. I'm not really that guy. I've been in court all week with our co-host, my co-host. She is facing, felony possession and cultivation charges here in El Paso County, Colorado Springs. She is my caregiver as well, and provides everything you could ever ask for. And the state came in and lumped. Well, let me digress. The state, there was a broken meter, and that triggers questions. So they summoned in I believe $7 million Homeland Security plane from the Canadian border to do a flyover, and decided not to do anything. Well, people threw a fit once that got out to the media, so they came in and arrested Elisa, charged her with this, claiming she was over her plant count and they didn't find recommendations. Well, when they went into her grow, as it was shown in court today, her patient's records box was left on the table, and what happened was the police moved it back behind a heater in a corner, and claimed they never found it. So that just to show you, that is where we're at with this drug war. These are the absurd things that we are trying in our courts, that we're spending taxpayer money on. In the course of this week, I watched a child molester walk right out the door, and here we are 5 days in, or 5 days in now, to Elisa's trial, and still with no end, So, Mr. Johnson...
I completely concur. The fact that we think we're getting better when the reality is it's not getting better at all. There are still all these arrests happening, and tens of millions of Americans have been subject to the criminal justice system because of our marijuana laws. In the last 40 years, there have been 45 million arrests on drug-related crimes.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. When 60% of our prison population is non-violent drug offenders, we need to take a serious look at what we're doing. In my opinion, I know we've got just a couple more minutes here. I'm trying to watch the clock for you. We're feeding a private prison industry. I see, for me personally, the drug war all ties into so much. With this passage of the industrial hemp bill, I see this as a huge step. What we have to do is find a replacement industry. We know how stockholders are. They have to have their money somewhere. We can't keep going down this road of throwing our citizens in prison and having countries like China calling us out for human rights. I think the direction we need to go is we need to look for things like hemp, where we can produce, instantly create millions of jobs and produce, go back to producing 85% of what we use from hemp. So kudos on what you're doing again, and definitely keep up the great work, and you've got our support here at Overgrow the Radio. We'd love to get you back on a couple times before the election, get you some more votes.
Great. I'll hold you to that promise, and thank you all for your activism, and great being with you all.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk to you later.
Real quick, can you give folks your website so they can find you and get more information?
Yeah, GaryJohnson2012.com, and I would love for you all to do me a favor, and that would be to look at our latest ad that we came out with yesterday, and that would be YouTube, and that would be Gary Johnson. How about you becoming a libertarian? Just take a look at it and tell me what you all think.
Right on, sir. All right.
Is there actually a time where you're going to be here in Colorado? Or a date?
I don't have my schedule to be able to tell you when that's going to be, but absolutely. I am in and out of Colorado all the time.
Great. Yeah,
we'll
we would love to
in.
know. Yeah, we would love to know so we, as a community, can come out and support you and actually be there physically with you to support you.
Well, terrific.
Great.
Terrific. I'll hold you to that one, too.
Absolutely, sir.
All right.
Well, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you all very much.
All right, thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye.